Are you ready, Emily? Okay. Okay, it's 5:30 on Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 for the regular meeting for the Planning Commission. And before we do the call to order, we need to hold the election of the chair and the vice chair. This was an agenda item from the first meeting of the month, which we did cancel. So, correct? Or I'm sorry, the last meeting in December. I'm sorry. That was canceled. So at this time, is there anybody that is interested? Are there any nominations? And you can nominate yourself for chair.
I nominate Julia to continue as chair.
Thank you. I accept nomination.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for chair for the 2025 year? Okay. All those in favor of Julianne continuing as chair for 2025, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, for vice chair, do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Ellen to continue.
Would you like to accept that nomination?
Accept that nomination.
Okay. All those in favor of electing Commissioner Cummings for another year, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay. We got this. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. The land that we know as Sequim was once inhabited solely by the first peoples known as the S'Klallam people, represented by the three tribal governments, Lower Elwha S'Klallam, Jamestown S'Klallam, and Port Gamble S'Klallam. We serve as stewards of the land within the city of Sequim with the same care and consideration the S'Klallam tribes has and continues to provide. This acknowledgement is a respect to the S'Klallam people and their history. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory body to the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide guidance and direction for Sequim's future growth through continued review and improvement to Sequim's comprehensive plan, zoning code, shoreline management, environmental protection, and related land use documents. The Planning Commission will have all of the powers and perform each and all of the duties specified by Chapter 35A.63 RCW as amended and set forth or amended by ordinance. Roll call. Emily, will you please take roll call, noting that Commissioner Fain is absent with an excused absence today?
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Carter.
Present.
Commissioner Coonts.
Present.
Commissioner Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Hewitt. Commissioner Lefevre.
Present.
Commissioner Mihalik.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Approval of minutes. So we have two sets of minutes to approve tonight. The first being November 19th, when we set to approve those at a previous meeting, it was brought to our attention that there was some revisions that need to be done. So has everybody had a chance to look that over? And if so, are there any discussions or changes to the revised minutes from November 19th?
I looked at the YouTube, the November 19th. There is the first one, the approval of the minutes from the previous. I made a motion to approve the minutes, and Commissioner Hewitt seconded that, so that needs to be added to those. Okay? And other than that,
Okay, and that's for November 19th.
19th.
Okay. So we'll wait for those revisions and bring that
We
set of
can
minutes.
approve with those
Okay.
corrections.
Okay, with
if
the
the
corrections, if the corrections
commissioners
are done.
So choose.
Okay,
We don't have to bring them back if
okay, okay. So all of the, or I'm sorry, can we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended unless there is further discussion?
I move to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Okay,
Second.
okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, minutes for the November 19th meeting are approved. Thank you, Karen.
Welcome.
Okay, December 3rd minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from December 3rd? And if so, are there any changes or discussion on these minutes?
On December 3rd, we need to remove the invalid link on 4.1. It's a reference to the draft minutes, but it's an invalid link. And if we just remove that, the minutes are accurate.
Okay. So if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion to approve the minutes with the link removed? Okay, second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and nobody opposes, so the minutes are approved. Thank you. And I'll sign those sheets for you, Emily, before I leave. Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to the public comment section of our meeting. General public comment will be heard at this time. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. For those wishing to speak on the public topic hearings, which we do not have, please hold those comments until that portion of the meeting. But so that's irrelevant right now because we don't have a public hearing. But if there's anybody that would like to make public comment about anything in the room, please let us know. Okay. Emily, is there anybody online?
He's
No.
raising his finger.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Would you mind, Emily has a sheet. Would you mind putting your name on there that you have spoken during the meeting so that we have record of it? And also, Emily can, if she has your information, she can get with you and make sure that you are up to, well, not up to speed, but that you get information should we have anything that we are going to be discussing that you're interested in. I probably didn't explain that very well. Did I, Emily? But okay. No, we are appointed. Right.
So do we.
Yeah, we do too.
more action. I want to see more people getting involved in a political situation. When I first came to Square, we had 3 people that more or less ran the town. Pete Trotter, who was in charge of the money,
Right, and the council is elected by the citizens. And we appreciate you being here tonight, and we definitely appreciate your input. And I mean, I would love to see if we could facilitate maybe a conversation outside of like a general meeting right now, where we can get into depth about, you know, what the council, or I'm sorry, what the commission does and how we operate, and how it, you know, how we intertwine with the city, and what our obligations are, and you know, the scope of our work. And it is very important to us that we have you know, public input, and we all appreciate you being here tonight. Okay. Yeah, we do too. Yeah. Hmm. Well, thank you very much for that input. And will you make sure that you give Emily your contact information, and maybe we can circle back with Lindsay and Matt and see if we can, you know, get some more information to this gentleman? Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to give public comment, or anybody online?
There's no one online.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are going to move on to new business, since there's no general business, and we are looking at code amendment on private streets. Travis, do you have anything that you would like to input?
Yeah, so just to kind of, I guess, give some background as to why we're talking about this today is back in 2021, during our last annual docket session for comprehensive plan updates, there was a proposal to make changes to our transportation element of the comp plan. It was the direction of Planning Commission to have that be brought back up as part of the periodic update. And that was what was approved by council in 2022 when that docketing session went through as well. So this is now, I guess we have kicked the proverbial can, and now we are here, right, to now address that. So this is a conversation that we've had before, but it's public versus private streets. And the current comp plan does its best to limit and prefer public streets. And so in order to kind of think about private streets and how they are going to interact with the grid system and SQUIM and everything, we've got to think about how that looks in the comp plan first. So that's where we're at. And so the question for you guys is the stance still the same? Is that kind of based on the conversations we had? There were issues, or I guess to go back to what was proposed, there were changes in the transportation element that were proposed essentially to allow private streets in the one-off exceptions, not necessarily as an outright allowance, but in instances like manufactured home parks or for development that doesn't necessarily add to the overall network of the city. So we think of instances where past practices maybe have landlocked or provided or created an obstacle for future housing because they have this private road that they have to access through, and now we are requiring public streets. And now we've got this road island, and public works doesn't, maintenance comes into play, all sorts of things that we have to consider. So it's been a conversation that's gone kind of around and around, but now it's our opportunity to do something. And so we are kind of looking for, is public versus private streets still a priority you guys want us to address in this updated comp plan? Is the direction to allow private streets? Is the direction to not allow private streets? Or is it a allowance but by exception? And then what would be those exceptions that where we could consider a private street? So that's kind of why we're here. And like I said, the timing is now, as we're about 6 months out from adopting our updated comp plan. So if we want to do something, here we are. So I mean, if you have questions, fire off, but really I want to hear kind of what your direction is. So
Okay, thank you. And I do, before we get started in our discussion, Commissioner Fain was not able to be here tonight, but he did send an email, and I'd like to read that, especially in light of maybe not everybody on the Planning Commission is receiving emails as regularly as they should. What Alex said is, he said, "I'm sorry, as I really wanted to participate in this discussion on private streets. I prefer all new streets being public, except for those in gated communities with manned gate or electric locking gate, and connecting all new developments as much as possible to existing streets and paths. I imagine this is the consensus, but of course the detail of how to adjust the comprehensive plan and SMC to set this forth, if that is the consensus, is what the meeting is all about. I'm looking forward to catching up with it on the video archive." So that is, at this point, prior to any discussion, that is Alex's input on this. So so let's start. Is there anybody that would like to ask questions or input on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
Travis, this is for you. I believe we modified the zoning development code so that all of the private streets had to meet the same code as the public. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that issue has been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, so like the standards by which it would be developed today, regardless, we would do public street standards, same as any new street. Yeah.
That was one of the reasons they wanted to have private. The manufactured home parks, these areas that we did the site visits, they had their signs taken down because those weren't streets. Those are private, right? Whatever they're called, they're private. So anything built after would not look anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So as of today, if a new private street were proposed and we were able to allow it somehow, it would be required to be to city standards based on whatever street classification is. So local, neighborhood, what have you, and then they would have to meet that. Yeah. So, but this is where we can have those conversations. If I don't think that we would steer away from that. But that's where we're at. So,
and fire code regulates the gated streets, correct?
Well, and I know that we would probably prefer not to have gated communities. Mm-hmm. It's not good for connectivity, not only for vehicles, but when you have those gated communities, it forces pedestrians, bicycles, and everybody to go around as well. So it really cuts off how the city's supposed to flow. So I think our preference would be to not have the gates at all, either way. So,
and according to statements in here in 2015, 40% of the streets were private.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
does the city have any plans on trying to make some of these streets public?
So we did recently, and that's referenced in here, there was a code amendment. We've basically opened up a policy or a process for conversion of private streets to public streets. So yes, we've identified that there is probably this need that will be coming. The problems there are, of course, we want to make sure the ones that we're accepting or that we take on aren't going to become liabilities in the near future. So there are some requirements for what the status of the road is supposed to be, the condition of the road, needing 100% buy-in from all of the property owners. So that's something we'd probably consider here as well if we're talking about utilizing existing private streets for new developments. What kind of buy-off do we need from those property owners? So, I mean, it stands to reason there. At least it looks like we probably want 100% similar with other codes where we're utilizing private streets. So that's what we're here to kind of figure out is what scenario or what situation does it make sense, if at all. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carter, and then okay.
So the conversion, the newer conversion is chapter 12.11. Is that it?
Correct.
How old is this?
I believe that was adopted in 2024. So it's new.
So recently.
Yeah.
And I didn't read through it in detail, but I'll just ask you in general, is the conversion, I know the county conversion that they have is that the private street has to be to the same standards of the current new public streets. Is that correct in 1211 too?
So it is, we speak to like the pavement condition, and then the width of the proposed right-of-way must be consistent with city street standards at the time of proposal. So if there's inadequate amount of right-of-way, there'd probably be need of a dedication to increase that.
Okay.
So.
And then secondly, in terms of, I know in the past, when we first had this conversation, there were private streets that were done by developers, and the residents created a homeowners association, but there typically wasn't enough money in the homeowners association to do repairs, snow removal, whatever. And those resident and the developer kind of, did that. Mm-hmm. And you guys were getting a lot of calls from those residents to come do our snow. And the answer at that time, I believe, was it's a private street. Is that still where we're at with the private streets?
So as far as what I guess Public Works responsibility is for maintenance, I don't know entirely. So I don't want to speak to that. But okay. My assumption would be that that's probably still where we're at. We wouldn't do maintenance on private roads. You
would not do maintenance?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, that's where I would have that confirmed with Public Works. But that would be my assumption. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Larry.
I believe I lived in the community that was creating a problem. We had a public street that was landlocked by two private street accesses. And, I will reiterate what Alex said. I am all for let's go 100% public streets. As I kind of replay in my mind what I heard from the community, they want an open rural environment at least within the city. They want it to be friendly. And I know I had the challenge with how we're going to be friendly, but a gated community with private roads doesn't have that feel in my mind that we're talking about here. I mean, if somebody wants to buy a big parcel of land and put a fence on the front of it, that's different. So I'm all in favor of going 100% public roads from this point forward, because I've lived the problem of, you can't get fire or ambulance in if you can't get the streets snowplowed, right? And so it became a health issue for many of the older residents where I lived.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I do have I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit. And even if, we all would prefer that there not be gated communities, that might not be everyone in the community's preference. So how can we really say, yes, we're going to have all public streets because we don't want any gated communities? Is there going to be code around that? Is that even something that we should be putting code around?
So as of today, the comprehensive plan does speak to having a connected grid system, and there's figures that I reference in here. Let's see, figures 4A and 4B, and it kind of gives a pretty good example of what it looks like when you have these pocket neighborhoods that have walled themselves in. It goes from, instead of having this direct route, that now even the emergency services, the utility, all the maintenance folks, they've got to go now this longer route to get there as well. So while it may enhance privacy and feelings of security potentially, there are trade-offs, right? And so one of those is having this free-flowing connected community, and to what Larry said, having that kind of friendliness. If you can't walk in front of your neighbor's house because they've got it all walled off, then that poses a problem to us meeting those comp plan requirements for connectivity. So there are some roadblocks there for gating stuff off too.
So let's say that a developer comes in and they buy a parcel and they want to develop a community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, let's just say maybe 10 or 15 houses, and they're happy to do the streets up to the public standard, but they want it private and they wanted a gated community, and they have people that are ready to purchase those homes. What would the conversation be at that point if they're like, yes, we will honor connectivity, everything? What would that look like? What would that conversation look like? Like, well, we don't really want you here.
Well, I guess we would ask how a private street network adds to connectivity, because I would say that it adds connectivity for the residents that are able to use it, but those that it now cuts off from being able to use, like that wouldn't be a benefit to the community at large. That's a benefit to the people that live in the development. So our role and our job is to make sure that connectivity exists and happens when development occurs. And if we were to continue to allow neighborhoods to pop up and kind of wall themselves in, we'll lose that opportunity to have a connected community, and we'll essentially have a main road that everybody has to come out and access, and that's it.
So I guess the better way to ask that is, let's say that we move forward with public streets, and that's what we start researching, talking about, and are going to kind of implement. So how does that affect somebody that, is there any language how do we bridge that gap when the rubber meets the road? When somebody says, is it like, well, sorry, you can't build that kind of community here because, all the streets have to be public? How would that, I'm just trying to look towards the future. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a gated community person, but I'm just trying to, advocate for all sides.
Jeff, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we don't make ordinance.
Right.
That's not our job. That what we're doing here is the comprehensive plan and the vision. Here's how we would prefer the Sequim Valley look like. And when we're changing what's in here or suggesting changes of what's in here, that will be adopted by someone else. It's not even our job to say, this is how it should be. We're just advisory. So thinking about what the ordinances are going to be, is like 3 steps too far for what our job is regarding the comprehensive plan and suggested vision and direction of the town.
Right.
So if we keep on, like, how did 8 years ago the people who wrote this old comprehensive plan, how did they view the town, and how did that turn out?
Mm-hmm.
And how with all of the community meetings we had, what's the community want now?
Right.
So, and then the job of ordinance is, that's way off.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And maybe you are correct that I'm thinking too far ahead. I guess what I'm trying to consider is that I know that we have been diligently working to clean up sections of the code so that all of it talks to each other, instead of having something here that's kind of murky and this is very clear. And so I guess I'm just mindful of, making sure that isn't how we're going to move forward. But Jeff's right. That's not our job today. I
Right.
guess I'm just used to, like, at my job thinking, what are we doing next week? What are we doing next month? What are we doing 6 months from now? So
Right.
that's maybe
Yeah,
my own personal experience that I'm interjecting right now.
Yeah. Even bringing this to you guys, it was important to set it up and as a setting of the stage, right? So this is really the decide which direction we're going to go in, and then, like Jeff said, we'll start to think of those things as we form a direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, yeah, just kind of taking all your input, and then at the end of this, hopefully, we'll have kind of some marching orders, if you will.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner Lefevre, and then we'll get to you, Eileen.
Oh, thank you. And excuse me for not knowing this, but besides the transportation element of the comp plan, which is typically based on a transportation plan, was there any kind of recommendation in the transportation plan that may give some sway as to our discussion?
And you're talking from the previous comprehensive plan, or for
Not the comp plan, a transportation plan, a separate standalone document that addresses the transportation element of the community itself?
right? So, I just mean, are you talking from
The most recent?
The most recent. Okay, so I'd have to look at the most recent one, and I think they're actually still working on a revision with the comp plan update. So it'd be interesting to chat with Nick and Paul to see, what directions they're going with that, or what kind of feedback they've received from that. So, yeah, let me make a note of that. But that'd be good information to have as we're kind of moving forward. So
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
FYI, Travis, what he's talking about is the previous transportation plan that part of this was based on also. And yes, there were recommendations by the engineer at the time, and that was for the public streets because of the problems that we're having with connectivity.
Right.
When you do road work on a main road, there's no road that you can send the traffic off to because they're all private. So to do the detours that was necessary when we did that major sewer and expansion, you had cars that were backed up. You couldn't really put them through the manufactured park.
right.
So that was one of the previous engineers' recommendation on going with the public roads in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty well bottlenecked in this area, and the farmlands, they're conservation farmlands. So there's a lot of areas that you're not going to be able to go through because they are what they are.
Right.
Thank you. Eileen?
If we go with the consensus that we do not want to allow private streets, how will that impact the private streets we have now? Is that going to be, are we going to have to fix that somehow that they're public, or can they just continue to be private and just not have any more private streets.
Yeah, I don't think, unless we were acquiring the land, I don't think we can force them to convert to public per se. But I think the issues that we have are potentially already felt by some properties, and it's not the existing streets, it's maybe the land that's accessed by those existing private streets. The current code requires that we provide one public access in a new development, and if the only access into the development is via a private street, that's going to be pretty hard to do. So that's again where, potential code updates in the future is if we are going to allow it, is there an exception for those landlocked parcels that have really no other option? So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. What do we want in the future? But knowing the problems that we may have created for ourselves by past practices, how do we address those? Mm-hmm. So, but we're trying not to leave anybody behind, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yes.
One maybe last comment, I'm not sure. But we're really talking about a very narrow portion of the transportation chapter of the comprehensive plan. We're just talking about private streets. There's so many other factors in here about how to create the kind of transportation we want, multimodal connectivity, bicycles, everything. So it's not, I mean, I'm sure that'll be worked out once the public-private thing is, but that's that much of a slice of this big on the transportation part. So I was actually a little bit surprised, but this is a follow-up from Barry in 2021, that we were just talking in such a narrow manner about public or private, because there's, like I say, there's so much in here.
Yeah, and I think we'll have some follow-up with SCJ and our consultants with the comp plan to see, what potentially they were planning on for these sections, if anything, and then we can go from there. But
yeah, I guess my ultimate point there was if we allow private, then that would allow variations to all of these vision statements on how wide a sidewalk should be, what kind of sewerage should it be, are there bicycle lane, it can just be the kind of communities that have been developed all over, which are car or truck heavy communities without any sidewalks. And we got enough housing here with no sidewalks and no bicycle lanes. I mean, all over the city. So it's really a matter of, do we want to create a vision, or do we want to just let someone else to create the vision for us? That's the way I look at it.
Okay. Does anybody have any other input on this? What they're feeling? I mean, I agree. I like the idea of the public streets because of the points that have been brought up in the past about accessibility. I know that when we were talking about the manufactured home overlay, there was multiple public comments about emergency vehicles accessibility and being able to find the properties, the addresses. My dad lives in a community that, when we had that big snowstorm, when we got 5 feet of snow, it wasn't plowed, and everybody in there was, 55 and over, and it was really a hazard. And so I based on, also the input that we've gotten during the public comment that we've collected and that our consultant has collected for the comprehensive plan review, the community really does want connectivity. They do want to be able to ride their bike. They want to be able to walk. They want to provide space for motorized, scooters and accessibility. So I would like to move forward with, recommending public streets, but I also am open to, with conditions for private streets. I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see a little bit of both once you start, what it would look like a little bit.
Okay. So yeah, so that sounds like the direction is it's moving closer to where it's kind of pointed, because like the comp plan as of now does have some restrictions for private streets. The code is in pieces the way kind of halfway there.
Yeah.
But so like what's, I guess the questions of if yes, a comp plan update will be required, but if no, so if you don't want to allow private streets, we can do some code updates to at least clean that up to get it more in line or consistent with the current comprehensive plan. We wouldn't have to wait for a comp plan update for that. However, if you want to see kind of what the exceptions could be, like in those one-offs where, they have a landlocked parcel or something that they're not going to be able to meet additional code for providing public access, then we can present those. But I guess just need the direction from you guys. So.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on this? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Larry.
Question. Didn't we just, and I forgot what the vote was at the city council, we talked about number of access points based on the number of homes
Yep.
within a development.
Yep. So that went from 30 to 15.
So there
yeah.
now has to be 2 after you get past the 15. Is that
So you have to have 2 after 15. So you can have 1
Right.
up to 15. And now if you're 16 and over, you got to have 2 points of access, which, could be, yeah. And depending on these parcels that are potentially landlocked or that are needing to find this additional public access, if they've only got that private and then they've got no option of providing a second, then they're even, they're kind of down bad with 2 codes. So
Right.
there is an option for a variance in that one, but I think it's just for if you can't meet the adequate distance for the 2 points of access, not if you just can't provide 2 points of access. So there is some code in there for some wiggle room, but I don't know if it gets you out of being able to or having to provide 2. It's just you maybe have them a little bit closer together.
I want to ask you your professional opinion because I don't come from this. The more one-offs we do, does that become more of a logistic nightmare or a challenge? I don't want to say nightmare because then I'm leading the witness, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is it more of a logistic problem to have one-offs?
I think if it's rooted in something that is measurable, tangible, and not discretionary, then I think that's reasonable. I don't want to put the city or the council or commission in a position where they have to be the ones to decide which private streets are allowed and which ones aren't. I think if we can establish, standards, that would be my preference.
And that's the 2 or 3 steps down the
That's
line.
it's like if we want to allow them in an exception, what are those exceptions?
And just tell you to define them, and then we walk away from it.
Right. And that, we can gather public comment and we can do all the things through public hearing that way too.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an inventory of these landlocked parcels you've been mentioning?
We have a draft. We didn't want to share it because obviously it's a draft. But if there's some direction to look into that, then we can spend a little bit more time to clean it up because it's raw parcel data. So we're just using some GIS to kind of get an estimate, and then there'd be some contextualize just to kind of be like, okay,
And that's all.
That property's not.
Is that all city limits or is it UGA?
We can do either. I think as of right now, the map that I've seen is both. But if we want to fine tune it one way or another, that shouldn't be too difficult. But
That would be helpful for me. I don't know what the commission's preference is, but I know I appreciate Larry's question about if we let one-offs go, what would that be challenging? And I guess the way I look at it is we've let them go for so long. Here we are at the challenge, so.
Yeah.
If that's available, maybe you could send it out,
Okay.
email it out to me at least. I don't know about anybody else.
Okay.
I would appreciate that for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eileen, and then Karen afterwards.
So a developer shows up and says, this is the land I have. This is what I want to do. Your department offers some guidance about this whole thing, right? From the get-go, saying, well, you need to think about streets and you need to think about access. And so really, I don't know if we're talking about something that wouldn't happen very often because of what you offer from the beginning. Or as a developer says, I'm doing it anyway. This is what I'm going to do. I don't know how often that happens, but
Yeah, since I've been here, it's been all public streets. So, yeah, nobody's really tried to push it too much. I know that there's some applicants that have come in and had some issues, but
sure.
yeah, it's just kind of trying to think with the foresight of, this may not be an issue today, but as we do develop out and as developers provide more housing, it could become one. And so,
Yeah. Well, you guys are the guardian angels of developers, so they should listen to you. Thanks.
Karen?
Question, Travis. If we allow private streets on this exception for landlocked, what is the public good of allowing a private street on a landlocked area that has a private?
like, what's the benefit to the?
Yeah, it says landlocked outside of a 200-foot of public street. Why not just create a public street to get into it? Or is this saying that they have to access it via a public? This isn't written quite the way I think it's intended to be written.
So, okay, so the question you're asking is about do we want to allow new private streets only when it is landlocked outside 200 feet of a public street? Is that?
Yeah.
And I think that's just an attempt to try to put some sort of a metric to that. Like if we're trying to have some sort of a standard where, you have this one-off, what's the appropriate distance away from a public street, where we could say, okay, that would be, that's a far enough distance where maybe providing a public street might be more of a challenge than it is a benefit. So that's just out there as a suggestion. If you guys want it to be larger, if you don't want it to have any sort of a measurement there, at least in sort of distance, then we don't have to. So it's just an idea to kind of get you guys thinking of what those exceptions could be. So the other part of that is if it's landlocked because of physical environmental constraints, right? So like it's got a topographic issue that they can't get to it for whatever reason. So ones like that's where we're considering, like maybe they have private street over here that they can access, but they've got an environmental issue on this side, so they can't access it from this side either. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking about that could happen, but this is where we would discuss what those actually are.
Since private and public are both constructed the same,
Mhm.
I like the way the comp plan reads right now.
Okay.
Whereas 4.3.9 says public. So I lean towards the public aspect since we've already cleaned up the standards for the roads and what there are no different standards.
Right.
Unless it's an alley.
Right. Yeah. And so, and I think Barry's, the reason it got brought up was if we have this strong stance of just allowing public, what do we do? What do we tell those developers that do come in and aren't able to connect or meet the standards that are in code today for connecting? So that's the That's the challenge. Is if they are landlocked, how do they meet the public requirement?
Why is that a challenge?
Why?
What we say to developers who buy landlocked land knowing what the development standards are in the area.
Right. So if that's the standard, then are we effectively saying that that piece of land can't be developed for housing in the future?
Isn't that what we're here for? To decide what swim
Right.
looks like,
Yeah.
right? So that's not a difficult conversation from my point of view, but it may be from others' points of view. I mean, not everything in the world needs to be up for development. Or at least I hope we don't think it should be up for development. What's the quality of living when there's nothing but housing
Right.
all over the place?
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else on this? Okay. So I feel the commission is leaning towards recommendation to research public streets. Is that, am I correct in that? Okay. Okay.
And just public streets, no exceptions.
What do you guys think?
I would be in favor of just going with public streets at this point in time. I think that fits with what I've heard from the community in the comprehensive planning discussions. They want it open. They want that. So that's the way I would lean.
That's the way I would lean too. And then if staff comes up with some kind of reason why we should consider it,
Mm-hmm.
I certainly be willing to listen to that. But I think going public as much as we can, fully as we can, is what we should be doing.
I would like some examples though of what those one-off contingencies would be. Because I don't also, I mean, I agree with Jeff, like I'm all about like having, open space but also I want to make sure that there's room for, if somebody does have landlocked and they do want to develop it, I don't know.
But why?
Just-
Well, they bought it landlocked. They bought it with total knowledge about why do we
But maybe
change our vision?
they already own it. Maybe they already own it and now it's landlocked.
Well, I think that'd probably be a legal wrangle about how long you've owned it and what the ordinances were at that time. I don't know because I'm not a lawyer.
Right.
But we've had plenty of people who have come to this commission who want us to kind of change the ordinance because they just bought something and they want to do something. That's again,
Yeah, that's true.
ordinances. So I mean, you buy it with total knowledge. It's not like you don't know, or maybe you don't know.
Right. Okay, anything else? Yes, Dennis.
Yeah, I am in favor of public streets as well, but I'd still like to see that inventory of the landlocked parcels potentially within the city.
Yep.
UGA is a different issue altogether, but definitely within the city.
Yeah, I would too.
So we can just get that emailed out to you probably tomorrow. Travis and I can link up and get it sent out to everybody. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I'll get your situation sorted too.
Yeah, and then if you guys take a look at that draft and decide it bears, having us further explore it or, like I said, fine tune it some more, then we can do that. But as of right now, it is a draft. So,
Okay. So you have in the recommended action and public hearing is required. At what point is a public hearing required? Because I don't see that it's a motion for us to.
Right. So because this is just, this was kind of the direction setting meeting, a public meeting and public hearing will eventually be required once we get to that. So this is a topic that we will continue to discuss. And then again, I will take a look at and eventually circle back with SCJ and Bill and just see, what were you guys planning for this type of any sort of language changes or amendments? What can we expect this to look like? Just so that we know as we're preparing to potentially make any code amendments, what to expect in that comp plan amendment as well. So yeah, that'll probably give us some direction. And if not, then I'll provide the information you guys have requested. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this? We good? Okay. Thanks, Travis. Okay. So, do you have anything for the director's report tonight, Travis?
I don't think we've got one tonight.
Okay,
So.
no director's report. Okay. Go to the order. Does anybody have anything for go to the order? Yes, Jeff.
I'll be as vague as I can. With the email that we all received and your reference now to that, you'll circle back to SJC and Bill. We need I need some walking papers about how we proceed forward from here. So that there's some consistency. You know what I mean? Okay. Does everybody know what I mean? No.
Yeah, I mean, I would, we are definitely in some, pretty heavy, with the comprehensive plan review. And I agree. I'd like to know, at least as the information pertains to us, I would like to know, what I just would like information if it's available on how we are going to proceed.
Yeah, and that's kind of the nature of my reaching out is to be able to provide that reassurance that we're, keeping on, and that whatever we need to do to facilitate it and bring it here and whatever it is. So yeah, that is my plan in reaching out to them. So.
Okay. Karen?
Question for you. Will you be here at the next meeting?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Yeah, knock on wood, right?
So Travis and I talked briefly at the beginning. We've got a consultant who's going to help us go forward. What I would like to know, and maybe it's from Matt, like, here's our plan for you commissioners with the city. I have all the confidence in the world in you, Travis. I'd love you to be here through the end of this. But I think that's what I want to know. I have confidence in the consulting firm, but we've flipped through a couple consultants, and I think that's what you're talking about, Commissioner.
Larry, can I ask a clarifying question? I'm taking notes. So do you mean clarification and all of that?
How the commission is going to function.
Right. Are you talking about just the comp plan or in general everything else?
In general, what's going on.
Gotcha.
And how we, because some of us have a commitment for a couple of years.
Sure. Yeah.
Some of us have a commitment for less than a couple of years, right? And so I think that's what, I've been through this in other organizations. There's always contingency plans, and that's what I would like to hear from, probably from Matt, I guess. I don't know. That's right. Is he the?
Yeah, that'd probably be the appropriate person.
Is that kind of where you were going, Jeff?
Kind of, sort of.
Kind of, sort of. Okay.
Go ahead, Karen.
So we're supposed to, and we talked about it about a month, 6 weeks ago, our work plan for 2025. Remember, we were going to have a work plan. So I know you've got a lot to do, but could we kind of sort of talk about that at the next meeting?
We can, and also
that together?
that was brought up at the December council meeting. I believe it was on the consent agenda. I'd have to look again. If so, it was adopted by council, so I'll look again. We can definitely have it as an agenda item though for next meeting.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. The other question that I had is I know that a couple months ago, Lindsay had talked about a few commissioners whose terms were expiring. Are we moving forward with the commission that we have right now?
Yes, those three
Okay.
commissioners have since reapplied and are good to go. Just updated their terms on the website, so it's officially official.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
was here, so
Yeah.
except for Alex, and he said he couldn't be here. So
Yeah, we're good.
okay. Just wanted to make sure. Anything else for the good of the order? No? Okay. Then that brings us to item number 10 on the agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Meeting is adjourned at 6:30.